All right. Are you doing this from home, mate? Just as a quick question. I can hear kids in the background.
So this is day 24 of isolation for me.
I'm sorry.
We had an uninvited guest at the Christmas table, and it went from my father to my wife. And then it's taken 3 weeks to go from my wife to the oldest to the youngest and finally to me.
Oh, wow. You're talking about COVID.
And it's pretty much out of isolation except me and the youngest.
G'day, I'm Josh Keegan, and this is the Space Down Under. Southern Launch is a commercial launch provider located in South Australia, with a facility at Whalers Way and a test range at Koonibba. Founded in 2017, Southern Launch has racked up a couple of major achievements since its inception. They were not only able to return sovereign launch capability to Australia, but they also provided Australia's first commercial launch service. In September 2020, two DART rockets called TED-1 and TED-2 were launched from the Koonibba test range on suborbital trajectories, reaching an altitude of 65 and 85 kilometres. Both rockets carried miniature payloads from DEWC systems. Not stopping there, they again made international headlines, but for all the wrong reasons. In September 2021, Taiwanese rocket company TiSpace attempted to launch the VSO-1 from the launch complex in Whalers Way. This launch attempt suffered an anomaly, causing a fire, which actually led to the scrubbing of the entire launch, with TiSpace eventually deciding not to proceed further with the VSO-1 campaign. In this interview, I caught up with Lloyd Damp. Lloyd is the CEO of Southern Launch and is the original founder of Australia's newest launch provider. We dive deep into the details of the VSO-1 failure, what TiSpace, now ATSpace, is doing next, and the exciting plans coming up later in 2022, now that ATSpace has received its launch licensing for VSO-2 and VSO-3. It's time to grab a cup of coffee, or at least your favourite beverage, and let's get started.
So the VSO-1 by TiSpace was scheduled to launch on in September 21. What happened with this launch?
Look, the first ever space launch attempt in Australia, right? Nothing will ever go linearly, right? So
of course not.
What could go wrong? And this is rocket science, right?
Yeah.
So as everyone's aware, Southern Launch, we manage the range, we set everything up, and we make sure that downrange is all safe. That all worked like an absolute treat. The TiSpace team, the Southern Launch team, we integrated really, really well. We had one set of procedures to operate on, and we had emergency services, everything there for all three launch attempts. So we actually tried to get VSO-1 off the ground 3 times. First time we got T-minus 30 minutes, and the jet stream was peaking too high based on the current conditions in our launch, in TiSpace's launch permit. We weren't allowed to launch. So we got to T-minus 30 minutes. The second launch attempt, I think this was on the 15th of September, we actually got through T-minus 30 minutes. So for everyone's awareness, that is the big go, no-go call. And that means that the rocket is fueled or is really close to being completely ready for launch, and we are a go, right? We got through T-minus 30, and TiSpace went through the ignition process for the rocket, but only 1 out of the 4 engines in the first stage ignited.
All right.
Completed ignition. So we turned everything off and did an assessment, why do we think this happened, and sat down with the space agency, had a really good discussion, and they said, look, you're good to go again. And we all went, nothing's wrong here, so to speak, because there's a bit of a difference between testing in Taiwan and trying to launch in Australia. Come the 16th of September, went through exactly the same processes and procedures, got to go, no go, thumbs up from everybody, and once again, only 1 out of the 4 engines ignited again, but in this case, when everything was shut down, so a small fire broke out on the launch pad, which then damaged the launch vehicle. And, very quickly we're able to put out the fire, but being a carbon fiber vehicle, once the carbon fiber gets damaged, that's it.
Exactly. So that would have been, completely damaged the entire, structure of the carbon fiber. So just in regard to launch and all that sort of stuff, publicly on your website, you've said that you've gained a lot of data and insight into the actual launch. What particular data did you get and what insight can you reveal to the rest of the world that you managed to gain from this?
Oh, look, from a safety perspective, you'll hear me say time and again, safety to people and the environment. That's our number one priority when undertaking space launches. All the processes, the plans that we developed with the emergency services, with state government, with federal government, we were able to test everything, right? And so first, if you think about it, was testing, setting up the range and notifying everybody and making sure that everyone is ready for the launch. And while we weren't able to test an actual launch procedure, we were able to test something that's potentially even better, our emergency procedure. When everything is going to plan, so be it. But when things don't go to plan and you have to enact your plan Bs, that's when you really get to learn the best. And it was incredible. Everything, Southern Launch, TiSpace, South Australian Police, ambulance, fireys, we all worked as this really cohesive team and very quickly got the situation under control and could move forward.
Wow. Magnificent. That's actually really, really magnificent. So what will happen with VSO-1? Are they due to actually try and launch again sometime this year? And how soon do you think they will launch?
So VSO-1 is the campaign. So the actual vehicle underneath, or the vehicle design is called the Hapith-1. Early last year, Australia took delivery of 3 Hapith-1s. So yes. So VSO-2 and VSO-3 are currently sitting here in Adelaide waiting to be licensed by the Space Agency.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes.
Yes, go on. Yeah, sorry.
And the Hapith-1 design are the upper 2 stages for the Hapith-5 design.
What's Hapith-5?
That's the orbit-capable vehicle.
Nice. Very nice.
Exactly, right? And this is, as I keep saying, safety to people and the environment. So the best way to do space launch is to do it incrementally, because Australia, we haven't done this since 1971 properly, right? Orbit since 1971. So Hapith-1 tests out the upper 2 stages, plonk on the proper first stage, and then potentially try and get to orbit.
And that's due to happen this year once all the certification and licensing and everything starts to come through. Yep. That's where it comes down to, is once the authorities start to get on board, it's pretty much cross your fingers and hope like hell that it happens this year.
Yeah. Well, and so we were hoping to do VSO-2, VSO-3 last year. With the loss of VSO-1, that has changed things somewhat, because, space launch licensing is embryonic in Australia, so there were a couple of steps and procedures that we had to and are still working through with the Space Agency, just to talk through a couple of things, and at the same time get those second and third launch permits approved to happen. And the good thing is that the Space Agency, Southern Launch, and now ATSpace, I'll come to that in a tick, we're all working very, very closely together, because everyone recognizes time is of the essence, right? That
absolutely.
As a nation, we are competing globally.
So my other question is, are TiSpace looking to launch everything from Australia all the way through the campaign from VSO-2 to VSO-5 to actually reach that orbital goal?
If we can demonstrate that Australia is a viable location for space launch activities, yes. And this is, I get so excited by this, because TiSpace, after they completed the VSO-1 launch campaign, right, we could no longer try again with the vehicle, they actually set up ATSpace, an Australian sister company, to do all operations here.
Wow.
Right? So Australia, have another rocket company. Yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, that's
Yes.
awesome news. Wow. I don't know what
Yeah.
to do with that information. Oh, that's fantastic. So obviously there's, for me, that just says a whole bunch of things all at once, which is they have more than enough confidence in Southern Launch capability to actually to launch their next series of rockets, to actually take that step, to take advantage of your Whalers Way launch pad and possibly any other launch pad that's coming online. Yeah, that's fantastic news. I think I did see something on that, but it was rather quietly announced.
We've always said establishing a launch capability creates that center of gravity that brings in all of these other technologies or other capabilities. Talking about jobs, ATSpace are already hiring Aussies here in Adelaide to help them manufacture the next raft of rocket vehicles here in Adelaide. Yeah, watch out.
Oh yeah, you're going to invite me to Adelaide at some point, mate.
Yes. Oh, I'm talking a lot about ATSpace, but I get so excited. You walk in and you actually see a big rocket in the flash.
Oh yeah.
This is what it's all actually about.
2019, I was in Sweden, in Kiruna, and they have a launch site up there as well. And Luna University, LTI, I think it is. They have a great big atrium where everyone can sit around and have coffee and study and whatnot. And at one end is a full sounding rocket that's at least 5 stories tall, and it's just standing there in the middle of where everyone's. It just like really blew my mind. And it's like it's like, oh yeah, that's our rocket.
It makes space an everyday thing for everyone who's involved.
Yeah, exactly. That's the entire intention, I'm sure. The Whalers Way launch complex. This all relates to the TiSpace and ATSpace and all that sort of stuff, and them launching from the initial Whalers Way complex. What happened with that? And this refers to, of course, the protests that were underway at that time. So can you give us a bit of insight into what happened there?
Sure. So we had about 4 very vocal protesters.
4?
Yes. Might have been 5, but look, it got quite dangerous at times because they were even driving vehicles at our staff and at our contractors and the likes. That wasn't a very nice experience. That they were raising issues that they felt needed to be raised, around safety to people and the environment and other aspects. And look, it was a bit horrible. And at times, we've got a lot of support from the South Australian police and others, because that type of behaviour just is inappropriate, regardless of the context. Looking at the broader community engagement and sentiment, what's the community say? As part of the bigger project, we've done a lot of public consultation through the state government. 67% of everybody who wrote into us was 100% for the project.
Wow.
And usually for these types of projects, it's the majority of people who are against the project write in. To us, it's a clear demonstration that the community is after this new technology in this area, which is great.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of the second site, because I know you had to actually move things away from where you were initially. So how's that progressing at the moment? Secondly, has there been any objections to your new site?
No. So for everyone's context, Whalers Way is a very large piece of land. And so what we're proposing to build in our permanent facility, 2 launch sites, right? Unfortunately, they don't have very cool names yet, just Launch Site A and Launch Site B.
Yep.
So watch the space. Hopefully we'll come up with some groovy names. So Launch Site B is in an area that's previously been cleared for farming, blah, blah, blah. So no problems there. The location that we had identified for Launch Site A, we went back to it and identified that there's actually quite a large number of some threatened bird species in that area. So we've subsequently moved the proposed site location northeast, so back and to the right, and brought in all the environmental, ecologists, native title holders to ensure that this new proposed site does tick all the boxes. So far that's really good, and then goes to state government for their assessment, or finally going to the South Australian Planning Minister. But we haven't yet finalised all that documentation yet to go in to even start that assessment. So.
Yeah, okay. So that actually brings me to another question. If you've got 2 launch sites like A and B, so what sort of launch capability or capacity will that actually provide Southern Launch for now and to whenever?
In all of our application documents, we believe that we could support up to 36 orbital launches a year.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
It's great, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the same cadence as SpaceX. That's what they're on currently at the moment right now, just with a Falcon 9.
And these rockets are a lot smaller. Think it through. It's like a lot of Ubers going to a specific location versus a lot of big buses. So the ability to wash, rinse, repeat is there.
So are these mainly, with the types of rockets that you're able to launch in 36 launches, is that suborbital mainly, or is that a combination of both?
No, so we're aiming for 36 orbital and 6 suborbital, because usually from an incremental development perspective, like what ATSpace are doing with the Hapith-1, the smaller rockets, testing out critical subcomponents before then trying to go into orbit. We expect few of those tests and tries in suborbital and more of the orbital.
Yeah, exactly. That's fantastic. So look, I'm just going to switch gears now over to Koonibba test range. I've probably said it all wrong and I apologize for that. What is the capability of the test range? What exactly, I mean, you've said that the ATSpace and TiSpace actually doing a lot of testing at the current A and B sites, but what's the purpose of the test range then?
Whalers Way is predominantly designed for testing orbital vehicles and launching into orbit, while the Koonibba test range is about launching smaller rockets out into the desert. So the key one there is that, for everyone's awareness, an orbital launch goes out into space and then accelerates to the point that the satellite stays in orbit. A suborbital launch goes up out of space and then comes back down again. And the real reason for Koonibba is so that when it comes back down, you are picking up the payload in the desert. So you're not trying to go 200-300 kilometers down into the Great Australian Bight to fish something out of the water, right? Things tend to sink in the ocean.
Yeah, and it happens to be a little bit challenging right down there too.
So Koonibba launch things up, either into the atmosphere, testing communications, testing bits of payloads, or actually send them out into space. So a lot of national research institutions, will send a telescope, for example, a telescope out of the atmosphere, so that the telescope is unhindered by the Earth's atmosphere, and they can image then particular nebula or the likes, and then recover all of that information off the ground. So that's a key difference there.
People, when they look at launch sites and things like that, they always have a tendency to say, look, the closer to the equator things are, the more of a boost everything gets with the rotation of the Earth. So it's better off to have a launch site on the equator. What are the distinct advantages of actually having a site this far south for Southern Launch?
I guess the key thing is being close to the equator is absolutely fantastic if you intend to go around the equator. Right?
Yep.
Quite simply. And ultimately, you want to be as far away from the equator if you want to go around the poles. So the best, and so these are the two different launch markets that exist in space launch at the moment. There's the very mature ability to launch around the Earth's equator, and that's where we've got our NBN satellites, our Optus satellites, telecommunications, you name it. That's what they like to go in. And then along comes other new space technologies such as Planet Labs and Starlink and a whole bunch of these other newer satellites are using other orbits. And the key one that we are working to service, so to speak, is the polar sun-synchronous orbits. And for everyone's awareness, when the satellite's going north-south or south-north, whichever way you want to go, the Earth is spinning on its axis. So with a small constellation of satellites, you can get global coverage. And that's the big difference here. So ultimately, we are launching, I'll say, southwards. And so it's a very, very big advantage from where we've selected, because there's no habitation south of us.
Yeah, exactly. But plus also coupled with Australia's clearer than average skies, with air traffic and all that sort of stuff, and better weather conditions, especially in the southern part of the country. Yeah, it's absolutely ideal. With everything we've spoken about, the launch pads and the test range and all that sort of stuff, what's the Australian rocket company interest so far?
It's growing. There's the players that everybody knows, and then there's also a whole bunch of other companies who are in stealth mode, so to speak, that we're talking to. The real one for us is the number of mature international companies that have also reached out and that we are progressing discussions with. I mean, case in point is TiSpace. That discussion started 18 months ago and resulted in Australia's first launch permit. And so a lot of international companies are now looking to Australia for their launch capability. With Australia just announcing that we are progressing a technology safeguard agreement with America, that's now opened up even another very large raft of companies. So very exciting from that aspect.
It is a very exciting time in the Australian space industry, and certainly the new version of space, I guess everyone's calling it Space 2.0. It's certainly lining itself up to be magnificent for 2022 and beyond. It's just becoming more and more interesting every single day. I've got one final question. I noticed on your website that there was a thing called Magic. What is Magic, and what is it? I understand it's some sort of software. And what is the benefits of actually using something like Magic when assessing a potential launch?
This is when I get to put my nerd on.
Yes.
So Magic helps us assess launch safety, right? So what Magic does is for every single launch that we do, we simulate tens of thousands, or we undertake tens of thousands of simulations, and we work out, if the wind is going any which direction, it's blowing hard, it's blowing soft, the vehicle actually is carrying more payload, it's carrying less payload here. We have all of these variables that we throw into Magic. Magic then works out what's known as a probability density function. And in short, what that means is it goes for every single location, what is the probability that a piece of the rocket will land on you? And that then allows us to go, well, what is the risk to people and what is the risk to the environment? We're able to tune, so to speak, the launch trajectory so that we make sure that the launch is the risk associated with the launch is as low as reasonably practicable. It gives us all of these risk contours, and because we've developed it ourselves, we've gone through all of the proper software assurance processes, we've validated the results that we generate. And so a hang of a lot of work has gone into that software. And we also provide it out to other companies to do risk assessments as well. So it's not something that we just use internally. And I should add that one of the key things for me is that when we undertake a launch, I've actually personally signed off that we Southern Launch believe that this launch is safe, regardless of what any other regulator or any other group has said. We've done our own assessment, and that's what we're going off, because I believe in personal responsibility for a lot of these activities. So there's a lot of cool stuff that, I'll get too much into the maths.
And I'd be completely fine with that. Thanks very much, Lloyd, for your time. Thanks very much for sparing a couple of moments to speak to me and to the audience from the Space Down Under. Certainly been a very eye-opening experience, especially with the ongoing family issues in the background. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for having me, Josh. And look, we really look forward to hopefully live streaming our next launches. So
yes, that'd be something I'd be very interested in.
So thank you so much.
If you want to know more, I have provided links below. So that way you can find out about the latest updates on ATSpace's VSO2 and VSO3 launches. Thanks very much for watching The Space Down Under. I'll catch you in the next one. And until then, remember to stay caffeinated.
So whoa! Ghost baby!
Hello.
Hello.
Night, honey.
Lovely.
I just wait for my wife to walk past. So
The mysterious ghost in the background.
yeah,
Don't worry, I'll edit that bit out.